Season 3A of Amphibia marked a significant narrative turn for the show. Marcy and Sasha hardly appear despite being crucial to the narrative progression of Season 2B. And even more than that, the entire world of Amphibia hardly appears at all in 3A, even though that is where the entire show took place in the first 2 seasons, not counting flashbacks. Taking the show to Earth was a major change-up, and it results in the show jettisoning a lot of the world and the character dynamics that people found compelling in the first 2 seasons. Now, we can debate the value of these changes, and they are certainly not all bad, but these changes are significant. If Season 3A did nothing but introduce characters of the day, it would have been very tiring. As much as I like the likes of Dr. Jan, voiced by Tiana herself, and Mr. X, voiced by RuPaul, these characters are superficial, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. They exist to fill a role in the narrative. But that's it. They are not three-dimensional, actual human beings. Anne's parents, however, are a little bit different. They are by far the most compelling new characters the show introduced in Season 3A. And so I believe they deserve a little more critical focus than they have hitherto gotten, from me or from others. These characters were slightly mentioned in the seasons before this point, but although we even saw Anne's mom for a little bit, these are small, insignificant references that exist more to fill in elements of Anne's past instead of establishing her parents as characters in their own right. In Season 3A, we do get her parents as characters in their own right, and they're quite interesting. To a certain extent, Mr. Boonchoy is a type. He's the lovable, goofy sitcom dad who has impossibly bad luck. Even when he succeeds, such as when he manages to get a nice candid picture of the family in the Christmas episode, it comes as a bit of a surprise because the character has been so perpetually set up as someone who consistently fails. This same pattern plays out even in the episode itself. Time and time again in this episode, we see Mr. Boonchoy try to take a picture of his family and really capture a moment when he believes they aren't looking, and all these pictures turn out terribly. There are varying reasons for this. Sometimes it's just because people are in awkward positions. In other times, it's because of plot-relevant interruptions. But his string of failures extends to such a degree that when he's finally left smiling and successful by the end of the episode, you feel glad for him because he's had such a hard time. He is, to a certain extent, an oaf, a lovable oaf. He's carrying his gaming controller, but then it gets zapped. He's trying to finish a major boss battle that he says has been going on for 10 hours, and then the computer shuts off. He takes Anne and Sprig to the place where they take those hot air balloons in Sprig's birthday, but then Anne forgets all about him, so he's left there with the car at the end of the episode. The show characterizes Mr. Boonchoy largely with jokes like this, yet he's not only an oaf. There are a few very nice, earnest, real moments that I quite appreciated. My favorite probably being in the silly, lighthearted episode wherein the planters are trying to take the cat to the vet. This is an episode that could largely be cut. It is not particularly essential, but I'm glad it exists, if only for the moment at the end when Pop Pop worries profoundly about being seen as a freeloader, and Mr. Boonchoy is so taken aback by this that he stops his motorcycle and he says that the planters will never owe them anything because of what they did for Anne, taking her in and caring for her as their own daughter when she didn't have anyone else. It's just a little moment, but it goes a long way, and I wish we could have seen a few more moments like this from Mr. Boonchoy instead of seeing him be treated like a goof character. He is very caring and compassionate, and he's also capable of great insight, and I think that should be expanded on. Mrs. Boonchoy, Anne's mom, has a much more comprehensive role in Season 3A. There are a few things about her character that could feel a little gimmicky, like how she's voiced by the showrunner's mom, but she never comes off as a gimmick character, especially in comparison to all these other one-off characters that we see throughout Season 3A. The show does not gloss over the depths of her sadness and grief at Anne's loss. It does not ignore how much she suffered and how relieved she then was to have Anne come back. Like Anne, she's clever, she's stubborn, and she's irascible to a fault, but she has a level of self-aware maturity that Anne lacks. Now, this is perhaps inevitable. Anne is still a child, after all, and I do not blame her for being a little self-centered, even after all her character growth throughout the last couple seasons of the show. But you do definitely see that Anne is unable to really comprehend the perspectives of other people when they contrast with her own perspective. This is a problem for Anne, especially since she is so impulsive. Now, you can argue that she's in the right whenever she's arguing with Sasha. I'm not sure I'd argue that, but Anne certainly does have real complaints about Sasha. But what about Marcy, whose perspective Anne pretty much ignores, demonstrated most poignantly in A Day at the Aquarium, when Anne is so distraught over having to say goodbye to her frog family that she completely pays no attention to how Marcy's feeling. Refusal to fully acknowledge the perspectives of other people is clear when she's talking with her mom. Anne has viewed the Thai temple, for instance, as just an obligation to her mother. She does not view it as a real cultural communal place. But when she understands the extent to which those people came together to help Anne's mom during her time of distress and sorrow and despondency, Anne understands the importance of that communal place and all it represents for her mother. And Anne also starts to feel a little bad that she was gone for so long. I like this level of introspection and self-reflection on Anne's part, even though we don't really get a lot of it from her, as opposed to her mom, who is very much aware of the bonds that sustain her. All these bonds with these other people in the Thai community, of course, her bond with her husband, and the very important bond with Anne that, like a lot of teenagers, Anne does not really realize how important that bond is to her mother. Anne's mom really cares about her, even if that's not always apparent to Anne. And Anne's mom is aware also of larger scale concerns. The moment that really touched me was when they finally have a parade for the Thai Go float at the Christmas festival, and Anne's mom admits that this parade was always really indicative to her of her adopted country, the United States, and what being American really entails. So by finally getting a Thai-Go float in that parade, Anne's mom really feels that she's fully included in the American experience. She's able to finally embody, to a certain extent, that level of Americanness that she never really felt before as an immigrant from Thailand. Anne does not really understand this until her mom explains it to her. And once Anne does, she really gets a larger sense of who her mom is, and so do we, the viewers. We see Anne's mom primarily through Anne's perspective, and Anne, of course, is a teenager. She's like, 13? She does not have the full picture on her parents, so when she gets a larger and more comprehensive and more adult view of her parents, we also get that, and that's very much appreciated. As a second-generation immigrant, there is a lot that Anne takes for granted that her immigrant parents do not, and I am glad the show depicts that in a way that is not heavy-handed or didactic, but that really fits with the ideas of community and unity that the show has really been emphasizing throughout its entire run. Anne's parents are the most compelling characters the show introduces in Season 3A, and the competition is not particularly close. This is not to say I don't like any of the other characters the show introduced, or that I don't have any problems with how the show characterizes Anne's parents, especially her father, but Anne's parents feel like actual living, breathing, full human beings in a way that the other characters the show introduces in Season 3A don't really. They have their own struggles and their own points of view and their own perspectives. They feel sorrow and hurt and despair when Anne's gone, and when she's back they feel joy and relief, but also a sense of anxiety, a fear that they could lose her again. We see their perspectives reflected through this prism of Anne's disappearance, and the result is some of the most compelling scenes in Season 3A. Now, I've voiced a lot of criticisms of Season 3A, and even apologists for Season 3A I don't think would call it their favorite part of the show. But there are scenes that I am really glad we have, and the most revealing and poignant scenes with her parents certainly rank among them. They were integrated very smoothly, I believe, into the narrative of the show. I can absolutely see Anne's mom as the protagonist of her own show, and I believe that's an accomplishment in of itself. She's a full enough character that she could definitely, I believe, anchor her own show. I'd love to see something about her experience growing up in Thailand and coming to America. Maybe with a little magical realism sprinkled in there. That'd be really interesting. So anyway, thank you all for watching. If you liked what you saw today, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Donate to my Patreon if you can, and you want to see more videos like this. Keep watching Amphibia. What do you think about Anne's parents and how they're characterized? Do you want to see more of Anne's parents in Season 3B? What do you think about the show's decision to introduce so many new characters in Season 3A? Do you think that was right, or do you think they should have stuck more with the characters we already know? Sound off in the comments. Anyway, tune in soon for my next analysis. Will be coming soon, promise you that. Thank you all again. Adios, comrades.